My dear friend, what if failure is necessary, saying no is powerful, and remembering that you will die is the secret to living a meaningful life? That's exactly what chapters 7, 8, and 9 of The Subtle Art of Not Giving Too Much Care by Mark Manson reveal. Because these chapters confront three truths most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid: failure, rejection, and death. And yet, according to Mark Manson, these are exactly the things that make a meaningful life possible. Today, we're diving into chapters 7, 8, and 9, the final lessons of The Subtle Art of Not Giving Too Much Care. And if you stay with me until the end, something very interesting will happen. You won't just understand the book. You might start seeing your own life differently. Because these chapters force us to ask uncomfortable questions. What if failure is actually necessary? What if saying no is the healthiest thing you can do? And what if remembering that you will die is actually the key to living well? Let's start with something most people fear more than anything: failure. Chapter 7. Failure is the path to success. Let me ask you something honestly. When you fail, what do you feel? Do you feel like you learned something valuable? Or do you feel embarrassed, ashamed, like you're not good enough? Most people hate failure. We avoid it. We fear it. We judge ourselves because of it. But in Chapter 7, Mark Manson makes a powerful claim. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the path to success. That sounds inspiring, but also frustrating. Because failure hurts. It damages our ego. It exposes our weaknesses. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that we are not as good as we thought we were. And to explain this idea, Mark shares a deeply personal story from his own life. When he was 19 years old, he went to a party near a lake with his friends. There was a cliff overlooking the water. People were drinking, laughing, jumping into the lake. It felt like one of those carefree nights when nothing bad could possibly happen. Later that night, Mark and another friend were leaving the party when they ran into one of their friends named Josh. Josh was drunk and stumbling. Mark invited him to come along for dinner. But Josh said something strange, something almost philosophical. He said, "Find the truth for yourself, and you'll find me there." A few hours later, there were flashing lights, an ambulance, police officers, people crying. Josh had jumped from the cliff into the lake, and he drowned. This moment shook Mark deeply, because sometimes failure doesn't come with a second chance. And this story leads us to something extremely important: the difference between knowledge, experience, and awareness. Most people know that failure is necessary. You've probably heard that phrase many times. Failure leads to success. But knowing something intellectually is not the same as understanding it emotionally. Let's break it down. Knowledge means you understand an idea. You know failure is part of success. Experience means you've gone through failure. You've felt the pain, the embarrassment, the frustration. But the deepest level is awareness. Awareness means you truly understand failure. You stop fearing it. You stop avoiding it. You see it as part of the process. And this is where Mark makes an interesting comparison. He compares babies to some of the greatest geniuses in history. People like Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, and Ludwig van Beethoven. Now, of course, babies are not geniuses, but they have something incredibly powerful. Babies don't care about failure. Think about how a baby learns to walk. They fall, again and again, hundreds of times, thousands of times. But a baby never sits on the floor and thinks, "I'm such a failure. This is embarrassing. Maybe walking just isn't for me." No, they simply try again and again and again. Eventually, they walk. And that simple persistence is the same principle behind every great achievement. So let me say this clearly, my friend. If you fail and quit, you lose. If you fail and keep trying, you learn. If you fail repeatedly and still move forward, you grow. Most people don't fail too much. They fail too little. They avoid challenges, they stay safe, they stay comfortable, and comfort quietly kills growth. Failure is not your enemy. Quitting is. But even if you understand failure, your life can still become overwhelmed by something else. Other people's expectations, their demands, their opinions, and unless you learn to protect your time and energy, you will spend your life chasing things that were never truly yours. That's why the next lesson is so important. Chapter 8. The importance of saying no. Now let's talk about something that may look simple, but is surprisingly difficult. Saying no. Most people struggle with this. We say yes even when we want to say no. Why? Because we don't want to hurt people. We don't want to disappoint anyone. We want to be liked. We want approval. So we agree to things we don't really want. We accept responsibilities that drain our energy. We sacrifice our own priorities for other people's expectations. And slowly, without realizing it, we start living a life that doesn't truly belong to us. In Chapter 8, Mark Manson talks about a fascinating cultural observation he had while spending time in Russia. He noticed something very different about how people communicate there. If someone doesn't like something, they simply say no, directly. No fake politeness, no pretending, no smiling while secretly feeling resentment. And at first, this can feel harsh. But the truth is actually the opposite. Direct honesty builds real relationships because people know where they stand with you. Mark explains that many people confuse two things: being rude and setting boundaries. They are not the same. Let's make this very clear. A rude no sounds like this. You're stupid for asking? That's a terrible idea. I don't care about your problem. That's disrespectful. But an honest no sounds very different. I'm not comfortable with this. I can't commit to that. This doesn't align with my priorities. That's not rude. That's self-respect. Here is a truth most people discover too late. When you say yes to everything, you say no to yourself. Your time is limited. Your energy is limited. Your attention is limited. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter, you lose time for the things that do. And this is one of the central messages of the book. You must choose what matters. Because if everything matters, then nothing matters. Learning to say no is one of the most powerful ways to protect your values. It's how you take responsibility for your life. And strangely enough, people respect you more when you have boundaries, because boundaries show that you respect yourself. And when you truly respect your time and your life, you begin to realize something even deeper. Your time here is limited. And this brings us to the final lesson. Chapter 9. And then you die. Now we arrive at the final chapter. And it begins with a truth that most people spend their lives trying not to think about. You will die. I will die. Every single person you know will die. That sounds dark. But in Chapter 9, Mark Manson argues that remembering death is actually one of the most powerful things you can do. Because when you truly understand that your life is limited, your priorities become clearer. Suddenly, many things stop mattering. Petty arguments, random opinions, the endless desire for approval. They begin to look small. Interestingly, this idea is not new. Even ancient wisdom recognized this truth. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 7:2, It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. In other words, remembering death is not meant to make us depressed. It is meant to wake us up. Mark describes a moment when he was traveling through the mountains of South Africa. Standing in the middle of vast nature, he felt something many people experience in powerful natural environments. A sense of smallness, not in a depressing way, but in a freeing way. You suddenly realize something profound. The universe is enormous, human history is vast, and your life is just a tiny moment in time. But instead of making life meaningless, this realization actually makes life more meaningful, because if life were endless, nothing would truly matter. But because life is limited, every moment becomes valuable, every decision becomes important. Mark argues that life has no built-in meaning, and that might sound uncomfortable, but it's actually freedom. Because if life doesn't come with a predefined meaning, then you are free to create your own. You choose your values. You choose your struggles. You choose what matters. And that's the real message of The Subtle Art of Not Giving Too Much Care by Mark Manson. Not that nothing matters, but that you must choose carefully what matters. Comfort may feel safe, but comfort rarely creates meaning. Meaning often comes from struggle, from responsibility, from doing difficult things, from caring about something larger than your ego. A meaningful life is not painless, but it is real, it is honest, and it is deeply worth living. Final lessons from chapters 7, 8, and 9. So let's bring everything together. These final chapters leave us with 3 powerful truths. First, failure is not your enemy. Failure is your teacher. Every skill you build, every success you achieve is built on layers of mistakes and lessons learned. Second, saying no is not selfish. It's necessary. Boundaries protect your time, your energy, and your values. And third, death is not just an ending. It's a reminder that life is limited. Because when life is limited, what you choose to care about truly matters. Failure, boundaries, mortality. These truths may feel uncomfortable, but they are also incredibly freeing. Once you accept them, you stop trying to live a perfect life, and you start living a meaningful one. As the Bible wisely says, so teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Psalm 90:12. Every day matters. Every choice matters. Every struggle matters. When you remember that your time is limited, you start choosing carefully. You face failure with courage. You protect your boundaries. You focus only on what truly matters. If this video helped you understand chapters 7, 8, and 9 of The Subtle Art of Not Giving Too Much Care more deeply, then this is just the beginning. Because books like this aren't meant to sit on a shelf. They are meant to challenge how we think, how we live, and how we choose what truly matters. So, if you want more powerful book insights like this, subscribe to Essence of Books Explained, where we break down life-changing books and turn them into lessons you can actually apply to your life. Because life is short. Too short to waste on things that don't matter. Choose your struggles wisely. Face failure with courage. Protect your boundaries. And most importantly, live a life that actually means something. Number your days. Gain wisdom. Live meaningfully. And never stop growing.